All right. Hello, everybody on YouTube. Hope you're doing well today. We're also going live on Twitter. So, hello, amazing hackers on Twitter. Hope you're doing well today. Today, I want to give you a special thank you and a special shout out to each and every single one of you because we've reached 50,000 followers on Twitter. I keep saying subscribers because the YouTube thing with its followers, of course. 50,000 freaking followers. And we also crossed the 100,000 student barrier. That's amazing. I would have never expected this. If you would have told me this 2 years ago, that we would be here at this point, I would have told you we're crazy. Anyway, let's get right into it, shall we? Because today I want to give you guys like a little bit of a coaching session on getting a penetration testing job, because I know it's not easy and I want to prepare you guys for the interview a little bit. So if you guys are willing to speak to me, anybody, I would be very willing to give you a job interview like they would in a real job interview. Like just give you guys a hard time, I love giving you guys a hard time. So if anybody is up for that, if anybody's up for pretending to be a penetration tester who's applying for a job, please feel free to also just request being a speaker. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's get right into it, shall we? If anybody wants to say anything, type it in the comments. Just throw me anything. If you guys on YouTube want to join the discussion live, go to Twitter. So let's go, shall we? The first thing that I want to talk about is that not every single recruiter is going to be as harsh as I am going to be today, but there are going to be some. And do you really want to take that risk of being of standing in front of that recruiter not prepared? No, I don't think so either. So today we're going to give you guys a little bit of a interview, some questions that are often asked and how you guys can answer them as well, because I'll be telling you guys what these recruiters are looking for. Now you may be wondering, who is this rat that is going to talk about recruiting people? Well, I was responsible for recruiting software testers a while ago, and it wasn't really big recruiting. It was more like just reviewing resumes and then having a job interview with them and seeing if they would be a good fit for the testing team, all of that kind of stuff. Really fun. I really enjoyed it because I'm a person who looks at personalities and I look at who's in front of me. So how you react to these questions will say a lot more than what you actually say on those questions. And I'm always looking for that tester that's exploring and that wants to go further, that wants to know more. So the first thing I always ask is, okay, tell me a little bit about your penetration testing. And that's a very broad question, and I do that on purpose because I want to see how much of your experience you can improv if you have to. There's not going to be many times, but there will be times when you have to improvise a little bit. And I want to see, okay, what is your ready knowledge of pen testing? And you have to think about, okay, my pen testing, when I do that, it's a combination of everything. It's a combination of documentation, such as the test plan, the NDA, the test report, but also the type of testing that I'm doing here, the scope that I'm going to be testing on. Is it going to be feature level? Is it going to be complete level? Is it going to be complete organization level? As for the type of test, you have to think, am I doing a network pen test here? Am I doing a web app pen test? Maybe a mobile pen test? And it's really important that you talk about all of these details, because the more details you can give, the more you will convince me as a recruiter that you know what you're really talking about. And for some of you, I know that English isn't your first language, but in pen testing world, English is very important. And you don't have to speak perfect English, but you have to be able to have reasonable conversation, of course. So if you don't have that skill, that's also very important. And then what I also always ask is describe your test plan and test report then. Because I want the tester, I don't want them to know every single detail about that test plan and this test report that is in there. But I want them to know the broad lines, the general guidelines of, hey, you have this, like you have a revision history. That's important to me. I don't know why, I just like it. You have your document goals. That's also important. In this, you will outline why you create that specific document. Are you creating a test plan, or are you creating a test report? What's the purpose of that report? What's the purpose of that plan? Not that important. Who is this for? Maybe a little bit more important, maybe not that important. Depends on who you ask. But your testing objectives, they're very important. Also, your roles and responsibilities, like who do I contact? Who is the chief responsible for security? Who is a manager? Who gets a copy of this document? All of those things, it's very important that you know that in advance, because you need to know who to send this to. Is it to one contact person? Is it to a couple of people? And then, of course, also the scope that you're testing on. Very important that you define what's in scope, but also what's out of scope. If there's anything in particular that you can think of, or if the client mentions, I really want this out of scope, then you also mention that in your document. Then your methodologies, because pen testing, there are several different phases of pen testing. The design, the exploit, blah, 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 you know them. Just look them up, but make sure that you know at least a little bit about them. And also, what kind of a methodology can you follow? You can look at the OWASP web security testing guide, for example, and that can give you a little broad overview. And then you can think, okay, I can give coverage for the OWASP top 10, for the CWE top 25. You can think broader than just the basics that everybody knows, of course, as well. That's important, because you can say, I give this coverage, and that coverage. And then, of course, also your requirements, what you need to start testing. Do you need VPN access? Do you need God knows what, maybe a computer from your client? Maybe they insist on that. And then also the results and the deliverables that will be in that specific pen test. The tools that you used and the glossary, or that you're going to be using, and a glossary. So that's it for the test plan. Describe that a little bit. Think about how you can say that in your own words, and you don't have to know all of these different items again, but it's important that you need at least know the broad overview of what needs to be in there. And then, of course, we also have, let me quickly delete this comment. So then we also have the test report. Again, revision history, executive summary, in which you outline the scope again, some assumptions that you may have made, because sometimes you're making assumptions. You can put them in there. It's important that your client knows that as well. Your high-level summary of the issues. I always put that in top, because the managers, they want to quickly skim, oh, okay, that's my summary. Some people say put it at the bottom, because then managers can scroll to the bottom more easily. It depends, but just don't put it in the middle somewhere, of course. And then you have your graphs. That's something that I try to put in my reports as well, which will be like, you have this, like a bar graph of how many high severity, how many medium severity, how many low severity. So the client has an overview as well, a graphical overview. I don't know why, but something in the brain works better with graphics. And then, of course, you also have your issues. You really need to describe them well. You need to get a title, which is very short and concise. You need to have a steps to reproduce and also a description. And those have to be different, of course. And then you also have different in the sense that you can't just have your steps to reproduce as your description. And then, of course, you also need to give the actual result and the expected result. I always put the expected result in there as well. I also label the severity of the issue, and then I move on to the next one. There's that, and then, of course, you also have your exit criteria. Maybe is there anything like, okay, my testing is done at this point. I just put a short notice there at the end of my testing report of my testing period. Like, I've been testing from this point on to this point, and I do that so the client, if they want to, they can look at their logs and they at least have some history of that. So describe that test plan and that report in your own words, concisely. try to look at some example reports, that's important, and try to look at some example test plans as well, because it will give you an overview of what's expected of you. Then we have explain how you will keep your client's data safe. That's also an important one, because as a pen tester, you will often encounter things like files from your client. You will encounter things like maybe your client has a database, maybe that data needs to be secured in some way. I always tell my clients, look, you have a database here, we're going to do a pen test, make a backup. It's better to have a backup than don't have a backup. And as a pen tester, there always is an inherent risk. A very stupid example, I was pen testing a client of mine. I did a simple Nmap scan. I made it a little bit too aggressive, I think, because I crashed their servers. And you don't want to be the guy emailing them, hey, I crashed your server. But if you do, it's at least better to say, can you restore a backup, than, hey, oh, we don't have a backup for at least a month. So that's something that I always say is I look at my data backups, and if I have to copy something from my client, if I have to copy a file or whatever, I always tell them that I keep it on an encrypted drive. That's important. I don't want it to be just loosely on a Google Drive or anything. Here in Belgium, there are laws against that as well. Our client's data has to be on a Belgium server. I know, strange, but it's the case. I also always would ask the candidate, what's the difference of an IPS versus an IDS? And intrusion protection system versus intrusion detection system is what I'm expecting. I expect the client to say a little bit about each, like, and try and, sorry, the client, the person taking the interview, of course. I expect them to talk about intrusion protection systems, which actually take action against attackers, and then you have your detection systems, which give you alerts, which monitor. And I want the interviewed person to at least know the difference between those two, and I want them to recognize it at least a little bit as well, because this is gonna be pen testing. They need to be a little bit informed of what can happen, what they can encounter besides the regular firewall that everybody knows. Then of course I also ask them what tools there are and what tools they will be using, or what tools they can use. And if anybody has input on that, feel free to let me know as well. But I always use for my pen testing at least Burp Suite Pro Edition, at least OSINT, usually Nmap as well. Nikto, I know Nikto is pretty old, but I still like it. Nuclear Vulnerability Scanner, Nessus Vulnerability Scanner. And I list that to my clients and I tell them about it as well. And I think this is again important to, one, know if the person knows at least what tools are available, or can come up with some that they've used from experience. And then I ask them, okay, Burp Suite, how will you use it? And then I expect them to maybe say, okay, I'm going to use the automatic scan, because I want them to at least have looked at those things. You can easily get a free Burp Suite Pro trial, and that's always useful. Now, as for your resume, guys, make it stand out. And I've seen a resume by a friend of mine, guys, wow, it looks like a Google sheet, one page, very easy to overview. And as a recruiter, that will help a lot for those people. They get hundreds of resumes a day, sometimes thousands, and they have to skim through them very, very quickly and keep looking at, okay, what's important to me, what I always look at, is that the candidate shows a little bit of creativity, at least in their resume. This is a very creative job, pen testing. It's not a very cut and stone job, because I always say you follow a methodology, which of course you do, but that methodology, it's not always the same. A stupid example I can give is, let's test for IDORs. Well, you're gonna test differently than I'm gonna test, and you're gonna test different parameters than I'm gonna test. So that's something that I also wanted to give you guys as a general piece of advice. You're never going to be able to fully cover everything, and I want you to know that as well. And I want you to be able to express that why that is. It's like the fallacy, it's one of those fallacies of testing that 100% coverage is impossible. But we can still get great coverage if we follow particular guidelines. For example, I really like the OWASP Web Security Testing Guide as a starting point. And from there on out, you can add some new things from yourself, but mostly expand on the things that are there and rewrite them in your own words in a way that you will be using them. And that's what's important for me. That's what I've been doing as well. Every time I make a new article, I get a little bit further in that. And those articles are based on what I'm doing when I'm pen testing. Now, of course, you can't always be pen testing, but there are enough machines on Hack the Box that have a web server. There are enough web challenges out there that you can treat as a pen test. Why not do it? I don't get that. Like, people who want a pen testing job, just practice pen testing on one of these different web platforms. They're really great, and they can give you some much needed experience so that when you come across that recruiter, you at least know what to say, and you know it from experience and not from a textbook, because from some people this is going to be their first pen testing job that they're looking for. And of course, it's going to be hard to talk from experience and from the heart when you don't have any experience yet. So try to treat everything that you practice at as a pen test, and try to write some of that documentation while you go along. I know it's gonna be annoying because I don't like writing documentation either, but it's a big part of the process. You have to do it, because if the documentation is missing, then there's gonna be a big problem. That's not good for nobody. And all of that documentation has to be signed by both parties as well. Usually I also give a little bit of a debrief at my client, just a video or an audio message saying, hey, this is what I found, this is the recommendations, and maybe do a retest with this vulnerability scanner to see if this issue is resolved or anything like that. And then whenever I'm testing, of course, first of all, I'm gonna do information gathering, OSINT. So this is for the part where the recruiter is gonna ask, what's your methodology? If you have one, of course. And my methodology is, again, just have a look at that OWASP Web Security Testing Guide, very comprehensive. Starts with information gathering, and that's how every single hack starts, in my opinion. What I see all too often is that hackers are very enthusiastic. There's nothing wrong with being enthusiastic. Please don't lose that enthusiasm, but you want to jump in and you want to start hacking right away. Oh, I have a target, let's go, let's start hacking. That's not the right mentality. You can't hack anything if you don't know how it works. Because hacking by definition is using things in unintended ways. But how can you know what the unintended way is if you don't even know what the intended way is? I'm telling you, you're gonna look straight over issues and you're gonna miss them if you dive in too deep directly and don't take the time to explore first. So information gathering is very important. If my target is a very public target, I'm gonna do some OSINT gathering, open source intelligence gathering. I'm gonna have a look at web servers, the search engines that are out there, and I'm not just talking about Google, but also Yahoo, DuckDuckGo, and I'm gonna try and look at all of the different search engines that I can think of, if I can find some more information about my client. And I know that there are OSINT frameworks out there, I just prefer not using them myself. I don't like those automation frameworks for some reason, I don't know why. Probably because there's like too much adjustments at each and every step. If I talk about an Nmap automated scanner, for example, I want to be able to react what the output is before I send a new command. And of course you can automate a chain of commands, but it really depends what you have. You can do an Nmap scan, and the next thing you might want to do is a Nikto scan, but if you don't have any ports that are running a web server, well, then you're screwed. So as you can see, there's a lot of variability in there. I'm going to fingerprint the web server. I'm going to use the Webalizer application. It's a browser plugin which will tell you what technology is running. That's Webalizer. And then you have, of course, I'm going to look for any information leakage on the server itself? Is there anything that I'm not supposed to see? That's very important. Gonna look in the source code very deeply as well, not just shallowly, but also gonna investigate JavaScript and all of that. And then I'm gonna see what applications are running on that web server, because it doesn't only have to be web. I can also explore other avenues, and I can see if I can find something there. And what I usually do is I do a port scan, and if I see something I don't know, I Google how to hack it. And I know it's like, it's not the 100% correct way to do it, but in bug bounties that helped me a lot. If I'm doing bug bounties, that's something I'm definitely looking for. But anyway, we're doing pen testing, so you want to identify your application entry points as well. You want to see, okay, what are all of the parameters? What I usually do is I open up Burp Suite, I set up my scope, and then I just start looking around, start clicking and start seeing what the normal functionality is. At that time, Burp Suite is going to fill up my sitemap, and later on I can manipulate that to find some things that, like for example, only parameterized requests. I can filter in Burp Suite on only parameterized requests. Those are the ones that I need, of course. No static web pages for me, thank you. And then you, of course, need to identify the, we talked about that already. Next thing, what I'm going to test for is configuration and deployment management. It's like the network infrastructure, HTTP methods, file permissions, cloud storage, subdomain takeover. All of these things belong under this category, basically. Then you have the identity management testing. That's one of my favorite parts, because that's the broken access control part. And what I really like is if I have a client that allows me to create different user accounts with different roles, and maybe even play with the roles myself. And it might mean that I have to retest my application 50 times over with different roles, but I don't know why, something in me enjoys that, especially if I do find a vulnerability. Then that's something that I always love, of course. Then you have your authentication testing. That is things like default credentials, weak logout mechanisms, bypassing authentication schemes. And by the way, if you go to the OWASP Web Security Testing Guide, you can find all of this, and you can even click through on it. And things like weak password policy, all of those things belong here. Recently, somebody asked me, hey, I was testing a website and he sent me over my password in plain text. How shall I report that? Well, that's the OWASP A3, so that's from the top 10, and that also belongs to authentication testing, of course. Authorization testing, we have directory traversal, file inclusion, bypassing authorization schemes, privilege escalation, and of course IDORs as well. Then we have session management testing. In session management testing, I'm going to try to look for cookie attributes that are not there but should be there. And that's the fun part about pen testing as well. You can actually report everything. So if your cookie doesn't have a flag, which it should have, then you can report it as a low vulnerability. I love doing that because even though it might not get fixed, I'm always somebody who at least has to have things known. They have to be in a ticket on Jira. Tickets can be closed for all I care, but it has to be available, if that makes any sense. As for my session management testing, besides the cookies, also session fixation, exposed session variables, cross-site request forgery is also in there, because CSRF tokens, as you guys all know, are bound to the session, especially if you've been following my ethical secure coding guide for developers, because that's in there as well. You get to create your own CSRF vulnerability. By the way, sorry, it's a little bit late. I'm tired, which is why I'm stumbling so much. I'm also going to test for session timeout. So if my session doesn't time out automatically, I'm going to also report that if it takes way too long as well. Session hijacking. Then we have input validation, and that's a very broad category because a lot of things fall under input validation. Testing for cross-site scripting, reflected and stored, HTTP verb tampering, parameter pollution, SQL injection, LDAP injection, XML injection, XPath injection, IMAP, SMTP, command injection. So as you can see, it's a very broad category, and testing for it means something different for every single person, because you cannot in any way, shape or form test every single parameter for all of these different vulnerabilities. So you have to be a little bit smart about what you apply when. There's just way too much things to test for. Unless maybe you make one attack string that tests all of them. So as you can see, you can start thinking about your attack strategy, which might not be the same specifically as these guys are following, because they're following a very linear path. But you can also test for things combined. For example, let's see here. I don't know if it's in here, but command-side template injection and server-side template injection, the SSTI is in there. Well, SSTI and cross-site scripting, you can perfectly test for those together. You can create a cross-site scripting attack string and then add the other attack string just behind it, your CSTI attack string. As for error handling, of course, if errors are being thrown and they're being too verbose, that's testing for stack traces and proper error handling as well. Then you have weak cryptography, that's testing for weak transport layer security. So if your HTTPS is not applied, or it should be, for example, especially if you're sending over things like passwords, and it's sent over plain text HTTP, well, that's not done, of course. Then testing for padding oracle, testing for sensitive information sent via unencrypted channels, that's the one that I was talking about. And then we have testing for weak encryption as well, which was that database problem where the password was not encrypted. Then we have the business logic testing, and wow, guys, that's a big one. It might not seem like a big one, but business logic testing, we're talking about logic here, and good luck trying to teach logic to somebody. I advise you to think of the most illogical person you have ever met and then trying to think, okay, how am I going to teach this person logic? It's almost a no done, and you're always looking for business logic data validation, the ability to forge requests, integrity checks, process timing. There's a lot of things you can do that you can test for here. But in business logic, again, it's very important that you first know your business and you know how your application should be running. Then you have your client-side testing as well, which can be done, but I usually don't do that. And then you also, of course, speak about the report. They give you a beautiful example, and that's basically a pen test, a web pen test. So it's quite a lot. But for a usual pen test, if I ask you to think like, okay, I haven't done a pen test before, at least you guys think I haven't done a pen test before. I get a medium-sized normal website, pretty basic. What is my time frame for pen testing? For me, myself, I try to take 1 week of pen testing for that, because I want to test a lot. Of course, you cannot test everything, but my coverage, I want it to be proper. And then, of course, sorry about that, that's just the normal web testing. You also have API testing. That also is something you can drill deep down into, because there's a lot of things to be said about API testing. There's also an OWASP API 10 again, which will give you some more information about the 10 most common vulnerabilities on the web. And it's important that you're able to tell the interviewer, okay, I know about a web application that I'm gonna test, and I know that it's not just the web application that I'm testing. I know that there might be an API, that I have burp in the middle, that I'm actually prepared with a plan of how I'm going to test it, with all of these things that we just talked about, and that you're not just going in blind either. it's important for me at least that the people that I talk to, they at least think a little bit about exploratory testing as well, because besides test plans and following test plans, that's all good. But I like to build in some time at least for exploratory testing and seeing where that gets me. I think it's session-based testing that I do kind of, or time box based testing. I don't know. I just time box myself like this many hours you get for the exploratory testing. And that's usually where I find the best bugs as well, by the way, because then I can look for beautiful chains. One of my clients, of course I can't name them, I found a beautiful chain into an account takeover, and at first it didn't seem like anything, because at first it was just a missing flag on a cookie, and that's what came out of the report, that's what came out of the testing. But then testing further, there was like a hidden parameter. That hidden parameter, I actually found a cross-site scripting on there. That cross-site scripting I was able to use to steal the account session token, and bam, you had an account takeover. So it can start as a very banal issue, but it can quickly grow into something bigger. But you need to have the time to test for it as well. So that's about it for what you can test for. We've talked about the documentation that needs to be in order. Always, guys, make sure that your documentation is in order, and that when you're finished, you also have a sign-off slip. Also make sure that you have your sign-off slip signed. It's just a very brief document which outlines the pen tester has tested the client's application from this time onto this time, and all of the deliverables have been delivered as agreed upon. That's basically your sign-off slip, and that's all you need. After all of that testing, just a very small slip. You've done your debriefing, everything's done. And that's basically a little bit of some tips that I've prepared for you guys as a pen tester, or as a pen testing interview that you might have coming up. Just make sure that you're well prepared, that you've practiced this, and that you don't go in blind, because of course we need somebody with a little bit of experience. Even if it's a junior position, it's always good to have some experience to make yourself stand out from the crowd a little bit. And also act very fluid while you're there. At least, first of all, what I want to say is be as critical of the employer as the employer is of you at that moment, because that employer is gonna be employing you for 8 hours a day for quite a substantial time, and you want it to be a good one. Of course, you don't want it to be, and I know that the jobs are not just for grabs, it's normal, but if you have the luxury, I would definitely do that. I don't know if anybody else have any questions, or if anybody would like to speak. I'm going to look at the YouTube comments. Mr. Chad is asking if I would hire him. Well, only if I can pay him out in cheese. I would very much like that. There is seriously so many spammers out there. It's ridiculous, and they're spamming like little streams, and I don't know where they're coming from. It's all of these YouTube bots that always find a way around the mechanism that should be banning them. Anyway, thank you very much for listening, everybody. This was a very short space, but I don't have much more to say at this moment. Well, I always have a lot to say, but I don't think it's gonna be relevant. I see that we have somebody requesting to speak, so I really appreciate that. Let's hear what they have to say. Hello, Mr. Lachen. How are you doing? Am I saying this right? Lachen? Your mic is muted, by the way, so I don't know if you're speaking, but we can't hear you. That's better.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, excellent.
My mic was off, so that's why I couldn't speak.
Pleasure to meet you, my friend. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm from Morocco, by the way. My name's you can spell it like Lahsen.
Larsen, like that.
Yes, and it's an Arabic word.
Awesome, thank you.
So, thank you for your work, and I really appreciate your your work here. So, but what I want to ask is, I'm beginning this in bug bounty world. What can you give me an advice? I'm sorry for my English. I'm not a fluent speaker.
No problem. It's very good, my friend. Thank you for that question. I really appreciate that. So I have a lot of videos on my channel about starting bug bounties. But the one thing that I would recommend most is that you change your mindset, because a lot of people have been practicing vulnerabilities, which is good. You should definitely be doing that. But it will be on naked labs or very, very small applications. But the reality is, you're gonna stand in front of an application, you're not even gonna know if it's vulnerable or not. While you're normally used to always looking for vulnerable applications, you know that that's vulnerable while you're practicing. You're not gonna have that luxury while you're doing bug bounties. So don't ever blame yourself if you don't find anything. The target might just be secure as well. You don't know. That's always something that you have to keep in mind. And also, pick your target like you would pick your wife, because your target is something, if you pick it correctly, you're gonna have a good time. If you pick it incorrectly, you're gonna have dupes and frustration and non-applicables and all of that stuff. So take your time to pick your target. If there's anything you don't like, dump it, pick a new one. Of course, don't treat your wife like that. That would not be a very good thing. I hope my wife didn't hear that, by the way. Hello, Mr. David. How are you doing? By the way, I hope that answered your question. If you still have any questions, feel free to ask me anything. Might not be very clear sometimes, especially this late at night.
No, no, not at all. Thank you so much. As always, done a great job. This is one of my first time chiming in. I know I'm kind of on and off the grid, but I just wanted to really, truly thank you for not only your expertise, but your training and allowing people like myself and others to grow further.
My
It's
pleasure.
really appreciated.
Thanks a lot for your support. I really appreciate that. I could be talking to a wall as well. That wouldn't be half as fun as this. Like, I really appreciate you guys being here as well. And if there's anything that I can do, please don't hesitate to tag me. And I might not see it, so don't be afraid to tag me more than once. But just don't spam me. Like, don't be like, hey rat, hey rat, hey rat, every 2 minutes. I'm also have a day job, but I will be happy to help everybody. Anyway, thanks a lot for that. And do you have a question as well?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh,
Oh no, definitely. Don't be sorry. I really appreciate you coming up and speaking. I'm gonna try again. Lachen. Is that it?
Yes, lesson. And
Lachen.
it can be difficult to pronounce it for the first time. Don't blame yourself for that.
I try to always learn different cultures. I really like that, like the food and the culture is itself, like especially Morocco. The country seems beautiful. I would love to go there someday.
You're welcome to anytime, brother.
Awesome. I will be packing my bags. I will be right there. Sorry, little bit of a joke.
So what I want to ask is can I practice the big bounty as a job, as a daily job, or just like a hobby or something like that? Because I'm a developer, a full time developer, and I want to go and explore the bug bounty world. So my question is, can it be a source of money besides my web development career, or would I switch directly to bug bounty?
That's a great question, and I've had that question a lot of times before. And some general tips that I can give you there is that bug bounties can be very unpredictable. Like, even if you can find consistent bugs, even then, the company might not pay out consistently, and you might be a couple of months without money. So, if you ever consider going into bug bounties, change your mindset from thinking I get monthly money to I get money every 3 months or 6 months or whatever. And then also, if you want to be a full-time bug hunter, just try it first and see if you like it, see if you can get anywhere. Because bug bounty hunting to get a full-time income in a lot of countries, that's less of an issue. In Belgium, that would not be, or it's possible, but it's a lot harder. And that's because here, everything costs a lot more. Like a basic house, my apartment is very, very basic. Cost me 650 euros per month. Then I still have electricity, water, gas, all of that stuff that I still need to pay. So it's a lot more expensive here, which makes it a lot more harder as well. And the last thing I want to say to that is if you really want to do bug bounties full time, make sure that you are prepared to have a losing streak, is what I call it, which is going to be a period where you cannot find any bugs. I sort of, and I know that this is probably not the right mentality, but I try to compare bug bounties to casinos. Because in a casino, you go in, you can have some winning streaks, you can have some losing streaks, but the casino always has the edge on you. The casino has always like a 51, 52, 55% advantage, you know, where you have a 54% advantage. It's like you're always handicapped. In bug bounties, it's the other way around. We always have the advantage because it's much, much more skill based than it is luck based. But still, it is partially luck based because you have to have the right combination of skills, targets that are available to you, because I know that there are a lot of platforms out there, but if you like a particular type of target, then you always got to look for that target. And also just make sure that you're prepared for that frustration, you know, and especially if you like, there are gonna be times when you need money, you're gonna find nothing but duplicates, non-applicables, and you're gonna rage at the computer. It's just part of life, because if your livelihood depends on it, if your wife and kids depend on it, you're gonna get a lot more defensive about that stuff. So I hope those tips helped. I know it's not a complete answer, but it's really hard to give. Hello, Mr. Oh, right, you were already here. Sorry, David. My bad. I told you
No,
it's
no,
late.
not a problem. I really appreciate it. That was an extremely well breakdown of the caveats and also the pros of bounty. I know you and I, we could speak a little bit more behind the scenes, but yeah, just to get started, etc. You've done a very well job, and
Thank you.
really just glad to be a part of it and to learn from you, and hopefully, show myself furthermore. There's not much, but in general, you get it.
I really appreciate you saying that, and I also think it's important to know that I think bug bounties in general, you have people that can teach you vulnerabilities, and you have people that you can teach you bug bounties. And that's a big difference for me, because teaching a vulnerability, I can pick any random stranger off the street and I can teach them how to look for a cross-site scripting vulnerability in any random site, and I'll guarantee you within an hour they'll have a hit. But that's not how hacking works. That's not how bug bounties work. There's so many different aspects that you have to take into account, and I'll go a little bit more into that later. But first of all, I'd like to ask, hello, Kim, how are you doing? Is it pronounced Kim? Oh no, sorry, it's Kamuko. How are you doing, my friend?
Hi, I'm doing so well, thanks, and you?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Yes, sorry, I got you guys, you had already started, but I can see the subject is ethical hacking coaching session, special extravaganza. Oh, okay. I just wanted to find out what's the best route for one to become a hacker? Like, good hacker?
That's a great question because I've been training somebody and that somebody's in the call with me as well. Don't know if they want to reveal themselves. But for me,
Okay.
it all starts with programming, and especially if you want to hack web apps, because web apps, you need to understand how those vulnerabilities work. So
Okay.
if you want to know how and it might seem a little bit overboard, but you don't have to go too deep into that kind of stuff. Just a little bit of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, maybe a backend database with some PHP to connect to it. The very basic stuff. And if you have that already, that's going to help you a lot. But besides that, the next thing you
Yes.
can do is you can look for the vulnerability types. Specifically, like for
All right.
example, start with something simple. And I know simple is very hard to define, but I always recommend people
Yes.
to start with CSRF. CSRF is
Okay.
it's a very shallow issue in a sense that you have a token which is bound to your session. That token is reflected in
Yes.
every single form, and that's about it when it comes to functionality. Whereas you can also start with IDORs, for example, but IDORs are a very hard vulnerability type to really grasp. A lot of people think IDORs are easy. They are really not easy. That's a joke. If IDORs were easy, I wouldn't have made 35 bucks in 2 months. That's not how it works. And
Okay.
like
Mhm.
for me, also, sorry, a little bit of a sidetrack. Some people they decide to start with cross-site scripting, for example. Worst decision ever. Cross-site scripting is a whole world of different exploits that you can take, and what I would recommend then is start with CSRF. After the CSRF, learn something more, but
Okay.
program those vulnerabilities, like really learn how they work and then learn how they can go wrong as well. Like think about it, look it up, then you will understand it.
Mhm.
And that's just part of it because while you're doing it, also try to make note of how to look for those vulnerabilities. Because like a very common
Okay.
CSRF vulnerability is that there is no CSRF token where there should be a CSRF token. And just even for somebody who doesn't know anything about hacking, something not being there that should be there is very hard to detect because it's not there by definition. If something is wrong, then it's a
Yes.
lot easier to see. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Like,
Yes, it does make sense. But then, okay, can I just continue with another question? Do
of
you
course.
mentor? Do you train people directly, like one on one? Do you kind of do that?
Yeah, for some people, I get to know them and then I try to train them a little bit into ethical hacking because I think it's
Okay.
important like to give back to the community as well every now and again, you know.
Okay. So,
I
what
can
can I
add to that
do?
as well.
What
Oh,
can,
go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, like Brandon is the
sorry?
person that I'm mentoring. I'm mentoring him. Well, people say mentoring, but I'm just calling it a peer-to-peer conversation. We are peers. We are having a
Oh,
conversation about things. I am not teaching him things. I am telling him what he needs to learn. And those
okay.
those are two different things. And for me, like um
Mm-hmm.
it's a it's important if you want to get into ethical hacking that you realize that it takes a lot of time, and a lot of people forget this.
Yes.
They
Mhm.
think like, for me, I've been into hacking for about 3 years now, and I got into hacking extremely
Okay.
fast. In about 2 or 3 months time, I got into hacking really heavily, but I have 7 years of IT background before I even started into hacking. So any IT background that you
Okay.
can get is good.
Okay. Okay. What can I do for you to be able to mentor me or to get to know me so that you can trust and mentor me?
Well, that's pretty.
Sorry, I put you on the spot.
No, that's not a problem at all. Well, it's pretty hard because, like, right now I have a Slack channel, a private Slack channel, which I have a few people on. But if you want, please feel free to send me a small essay about yourself and about why you want to get into ethical hacking to info@thexssrat.com, and I will
Sorry. Can you just say the email again?
info@thexssrat.com. It doesn't have to be.
Oh, okay. All right, perfect. I'll do that.
You don't have to write much, just a little bit about yourself and all of that stuff, and I'd be happy to take a look.
Sorry guys. I'm
Okay,
just
perfect.
being very informative. Oh, sorry. I will go ahead and join in. I think you guys know who I am. I'll join in and boost with the remainder of my boosters.
What is boosting? Sorry, it's a Slack
On the
channel.
Discord. Sorry.
Yeah.
If you have Slack, of course. I've been using that too.
I really appreciate it though. We also have a Discord channel that's public. I'm in there not as much as I should be, but it's like I try to be there at least a few times a week to just talk to people and just have fun with everybody.
Okay.
But
Okay. Sure. We all follow in your steps.
like
Really, so thankful and gracious. Yeah.
this goes for everybody. If you want to, feel free to send me an email at info@thexssrat.com and we can talk. Like I can't mentor everybody, you guys know that, and it's more about I have like a queue that I can put people in sometimes, but it's not like I can do too many things at a time. The good thing is that I can just say learn this, and I don't have to be too involved. But I really appreciate you guys being so interested in that. To be honest, I that's the only thing I can say. For me,
I can add to that, by the way, and just that to say, the work that I've been doing with Rat. I mean, again, like he said, mentoring is a pretty loose term. It's really been working on some projects together to really strengthen a lot of the core things that I need so that I can progress as well. So it really hasn't been a classroom or sessions, one-on-one sessions. It's really just been working on some central projects together that just by working on them really improve what I've been working on and doing. So I figured I could, clarify a little bit.
yeah, I've been using Brandon as a slave, to be honest. They built my labs for me.
Well, and and I know we have a line of people waiting, so I'll be very quick and just say that, if I could give you some advice, 15 years of IT before this, cybersecurity and ethical hacking is truly the marriage of the two worlds. It's the programming and coding and IT, and networking. It is really where all of it just comes together and meets in the middle.
Exactly, great addition. Hacking is just using tools, but it's like a combination of every single tool that's out there and every single concept that you can think of. All of these things play together. It's a really big part of it. Thanks for that. I really appreciate it. Who was next, by the way? I don't know who was next.
Raven and Meefs both. I think Raven's may have been waiting a little bit longer.
Hello, Mr. Raven. How are you doing?
Yeah, hello. I honestly just requested just like join in terms of like a conversation. I didn't have a question or anything. I thought this was a really good idea. I'm like just hanging out with the community. Just a little background about me. I do CTF challenges like for the community and stuff. I've done like plenty of CTFs with like a crew. I was just wondering, like, in terms of infrastructure and stuff, how do you deal with that stuff? Because as a challenge developer and stuff like that, I deal with like a ton of problems with just automation and stuff. So, is there any insight you could share with us on that?
That's a really good question. That's something that we've been struggling with as well because we've been developing labs and we want to commercialize them as well. They are very intense labs, very extensive. There's a lot of functionality in them. And the thing is, we want to commercialize them, but we want to give everybody a good experience as well. So what I've been doing is I mainly make web application labs, and I just give everybody a different subfolder, a subdirectory, but the subdirectory for the labs will be a UUID, so it will be hard to guess for everybody. And everybody's hacking basically the same site. They log into a control panel. In the control panel, they can set their options, and it's all set via an INI file. And then they log into the website. The website will recognize who it is, and they will open their INI file. And that's basically how I customize the webs for people, the labs for people, or how I can have them customize it themselves. But everything's running on Ubuntu VPS. And to be honest, I wish I could have done this better. Like, I wish I could just set up like a Docker container or something and start up a new lab for everybody in a micro servers or whatever. But unfortunately, I'm not good enough with that kind of stuff. Give me a PHP program and I will write it. But seriously, like, just a stupid example. I'm so bad with networking. I left several ports open, which allowed attackers for a complete takeover of my server a while ago. It's like, ugh, I'm a hacker. I should know that.
Honestly, hearing that, I don't know if I should be like happy or sad, because that has happened to me in like many challenges I've developed, where like I made it to be like solvable in one way, and then someone else does something else and completely breaks the entire system.
Yes. And it's like you have to make like labs for one lab for everybody, right? It's like one lab where 500 hackers have to hack on, and you have to make it so that they don't interrupt each other. That makes it really hard to make persistent issues, something that's not reflected cross-site scripting, for example. You can make stored cross-site scripting, but I promise you, if you don't put rate limiting on that thing, your database is gonna explode faster than a nuclear bomb. That has happened to me several times before. SQL injection as well, like all of those things. It's seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely understand what you mean. All right, so next one is possibly a question. So, as a CTF developer, my main problem is coming up with the realistic challenges, because I think the only way people can relate with a challenge is if it's realistic enough, where they can actually use it or apply it in the real world, or like in our case, bug bounties. So I'm just wondering, where do you get your inspirations for these challenges or this lab environment that you create? Because I think for me, I normally just read bug bounty write-ups. If I was good enough, I would actually do bug bounty myself. So I just rely upon bug bounty reports that I come across from HackerOne or Integrity and stuff like that. So where do you get your inspirations?
So really, like stupid things, like for example, if I make a cross-site scripting lab that I think that I really don't want anybody to hack, I will look at cross-site scripting polyglots and I will try to make it resistant to every single polyglot I can find, every single attack vector that I can find. And it might not be hyper realistic, but that's what I call my naked labs. And with naked labs, I mean labs with just one functionality, nothing built around it. Maybe one input form that does reflected cross-site scripting, for example. But then I also have my much bigger labs, which are going to be, or I try to make them realistic challenges. And what I try to do is I try to build things that I would use in my daily life, that I would need, or things that I've seen from my day job as a QA engineer. I've seen a lot of applications as a bug bounty hunter. I've seen a lot of applications, and I know where certain vulnerabilities are gonna hide because I've done a lot of pen testing. I've seen them. I've seen those vulnerabilities. That makes it a lot easier for me, of course. But what I always do, for example, if you want to make a Angular lab for CSCI or cross-site scripting, then you look at the Angular manual and it will say these are dangerous functions, don't use these. So it's more like I read the manual and I think, how could this go wrong? But that's more my testing brain, my QA engineer brain, thinking this is how it's supposed to work. Can I make this wobble in any way? And the appearance might be realistic, but I've also made labs that are total shams. Like for example, one lab that has two different arrays, and if you make a get request, you get the first array, which has 403 forbidden for everything. And if you make a post request, you get the second array. It should all be in one array. It should be real access control. It should be real authorization. It's not. I don't care. It does the job. It gets the job done. I want to say if you change your request method, you might get this. So realistic is something that I care about to a degree, but what I care about more is getting people to realize how they have to look for that specific thing that I am trying to teach them. And that is something that is really hard, in my opinion. Don't know if you've ever experienced that, but
Yeah, it's something I've absolutely experienced all the time. Thank you so much for answering all the questions as honest as possible. That's really appreciated. I think whatever you have mentioned will resonate with the community real well. Thank you so much.
thank you for
I'm
me.
going to add to that, by the way, and just mention that, when you talk about realism, one of the big challenges is you look at all these CTF platforms, and what's missing in most of them: networking, a lot of the real life, kind of office scenarios. You do have some machines that are more realistic than others, but it's kind of sort of hard to reproduce in a lab. Web hacking is definitely a good one. Things like that. But I've done consulting for it's almost 2 decades now, and the offices you go into for IT consulting and security consulting is like, the real life things are things that you almost you never hear about and you can't believe. You see that there's a switch on the floor over here and that they're using default passwords, and oh, here's this medical facility, but they're not using antivirus for some god awful reason.
Yeah,
So
it can
that's
even
my
be, it can even extend to a very high degree. Like you might not, you might do something, like for example, you might send if you forget password, you might send your email address. Well, you might add your email address after that. You might not think that does anything. It's like, okay, I'm adding 2 parameters here. What the heck does this do? But there are instances where it will actually send the password request form of the first user to the attacker. So it can be very banal, like hey, your passwords are in your monitor, but it can also be something very unexpected even. And like, sorry about that intermezzo, Brian. Brandon, my God, it's really late. Oh my God. Anyway, thank you very much for those questions and also for just helping the community out with creating those CTF challenges. Like we said, realism, it might matter, but realism often means very simple issues, just hidden very well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you as well. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
And we have poor Meefs has been very, very patient. I think he's next, or she. I'm not sure.
Thank you so much for your patience, Meeves. Appreciate it. Pleasure to meet you.
Likewise. I had I guess 2 things. For the last question regarding infrastructure, look into Docker and Terraform. You can use those to like basically build your infrastructure, by text. And then if you want, you can do like DevOps on, on all that.
Just a question about that. Is it easy or is it possible to have like a Docker container which has a web server on it and a database server on it? Or should you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I can just.
Yeah, anything you want. It's just another way of managing software. It runs as a runtime instead of like a full full blown VM. But yeah, Docker would be a real good way. And then if you're on the cloud, and even if you're not, Terraform would still be where I would direct people to go for building like reusable infrastructure via code. But as far as the question, I was kind of curious. Like a lot of let's just say web hacking requires like working of the web developer console, like, inside of either Chrome or, Mozilla, Firefox. And so, I've used it here and there, but I don't like, I don't know how to get better in it, or how to, like, a lot of queries or a lot of attacks seem to kind of reside where you build up some sort of logic within the console.log area. But in terms of even thinking about it, I'm not too certain of how that workflow goes, or, just what's going on there. So have you had experience with the web developer console, and, using it relative to hacking or, injection? And if so, can you, like, whatever recommendations you have would be appreciated. Thanks.
Definitely, thanks. That's a great question. Because the console is a really good tool, and it's a good tool in several ways. Because of course, ethical hacking is just using tools in a different way than they're supposed to be used. Well, we're going to use the developer console as well, and we're going to use it to analyze our website mainly. That's the main part of it. So your website, it consists of several chunks. You have your HTML, your CSS, you have your JavaScript, and then you have your PHP, which is backend. So we're not going to worry about that too much. That's not the developer console's task. First of all, the developer console can take you through the HTML real quickly, and if you need some information about HTML, that's always the place to go. What can you find in there? JavaScript files, you can find comments of developers, you can find hidden parameters. Those are the things that I would look for. And then of course you also have the console part of the developer controls, whatever, developer console. You also have the console part, and that's where you're gonna analyze JavaScript mostly. And you're gonna be able to, because that thing has IntelliSense. So if you type an A, it's gonna show you any function that can be executed with an A in it. Depending on if you're using Chrome or Firefox, it will either start with an A or contain an A. Then of course you also you can try to execute some of those JavaScript functions and try to see what they do. I found a lot of IDORs in that way, because I was able to, for example, use the function show invoices, which would bring up a pop-up with the invoice information, and that was a really big IDOR in there. So those are the things that you can look for in that console part. Then you also have, let me get keyboard real quick. So, but we have a mechanical keyboard, so that's why I have it on my lap, so I don't make everybody crazy with my typing in your ears with your. So you also have the sources tab, and was it the sources? No, you have the network tab, and then the network tab. This is really useful because you have a couple of things here. First of all, you can filter on request type. So, for example, you can filter on fetch/XHR requests, which are basically AJAX requests. And then you can see all of those requests and actually play with them. Now, of course, you can also see them in Burp Suite, but if you quickly want to interact with a request, or if you quickly want to see what's going on, this is the way to do it. You also have the storage tab. Let me see, application, where is it? Console memory, was it that? Nope, it's application. There it is. So it's the application tab, and in the application tab you can view things like the cookies, for example, but also what JavaScript have been. Is it this tab? I'm always confused. There is a tab where you can see what JavaScript have been loaded on the page. I don't use it usually. I go onto the Elements tab. I Control F for script, and I Control F for .js. That's how I find my JavaScript. It's basically a tool to give you an insight into how the application works. I hope that was I hope that was a useful answer. I know it was not comprehensive, but I definitely recommend you play around with it a little bit and you actually see what happens. And the thing is, like, a lot of developers use this to analyze their website, see what's going on in the background. We can use this as well to analyze a website and see what's going on in the background. Only we will not have developed it in this instance. We're just gonna try to bring it down. I hope that helped.
Very well said. Sorry, guys.
No, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Because, like,
Appreciate it.
of course, I can say something, but if somebody amplifies that brings a whole another level to it, you know. I always want you guys to question whatever I say, and I know it might sound silly, but you have to question everything. And it's not that you have to question everything constantly and throw up authority fights and fits and whatever. No, but you do have to do your due diligence and look into the people you follow, to look into the people that you adore. And that's something that's very important to me, because I used to look up to a lot of YouTubers when I was a lot younger that turned out to be very bad and nasty people, that had interactions with children that they shouldn't have had and stuff like that. I looked up to those people. I should have done a little bit better due diligence because there was a lot of scandals going on around that time. Believe it or not, but at the time I used to look up to Dan Locke. Yes, I know I'm an idiot, but still, that's why I say look into everybody that you look up to. Sorry about that. A little bit of an intermezzo. Do you have any more questions before we move on?
No, that's good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you a lot for holding the space.
Thanks a lot for joining, and thanks for your input as well. Really appreciate it. Mr. I'm gonna try again, but you're gonna have to help me a couple of times. Lachen. Sorry.
It's spelled lahsen.
Lachen.
Lahsen.
Lahsen.
Obviously, lahsen.
Lachen. Awesome. Thank you very much for helping me.
You're welcome. So, my question is, I'm sorry for asking a lot of questions.
Oh, of course.
My question is, so I had in Oracle with Podbuster, and I have some experience with SQL injection. So my question is it good for me to develop or use Python language or any language to develop my injection tools, or any tools that I like, or could I use the provided tools in Kali Linux or any other distribution?
What I usually do if I want to look for SQL injection is I try with like a single quote and a double quote and all of those things, and I try to get an error out of it. And if I see that I have any grip on it, then I run SQL Map. SQL Map is an automatic SQL injection testing tool, and I love that tool. I don't know why, but after so many years, it still stays relevant to me. It's like I also use this Burp Suite plugin for that same tool, SQL Map, and that's one that I highly recommend. And for the rest, I don't know. There's not much out there, right?
So my question is it good for me to develop my tools, or could I just use the?
I feel like you could, if you're talking about just automation of like, let's say you already found like a possible way to SQL inject something, it'd be really good for you to like just like quickly pick a ragtag script with Python or Bash, whatever floats your boat. You can just quickly write like a one-liner or something like that, just to like automate your SQL injection experience, But I think what Rat was basically talking about is. You could also use tools like SQL Map to, just automate stuff like without actually having to script from scratch, which, I see like good and bad from using both. Obviously, if you already found a way to exploit a website, it's obviously better for you to just, like make a Python script or something like that, just to keep going like quicker. Whereas for SQL Map, it might take a while for you to find the the point that you want to actually exploit. So I hope that answers your question.
The thing with things like, sorry,
Thank you, Raven, for your input.
the thing with SQL map, and yes, thank you very much, really appreciate it, by the way. The thing with SQL map, anybody can give input, by the way, but the thing with SQL map is that you really have to know it well to find good SQL injections. I am sure that at least half of SQL injections are missed because people don't know what options they need to pick when they use SQL map. And that's because they don't know what SQL injection is. So it's good that you have experience with that already. And if you take a look at the SQL map tool, I think you will use it a lot better than most people.
Yeah, Rat is actually right in this instance because it's not always that people know like what's the database running in the backend. It could be just like MySQL or like MariaDB, or I mean probably repeating the same thing, but there's like different types of databases that relies on SQL, and like not all of these databases have the same syntax. So this is where like SQL map is really useful because you just automate all that stuff. And you could just make SQL map on everything for you and tell you what is up, what is this, what's running in the background, what's gonna work for you, what's not. Does this have WAF, blah blah blah, so on and so forth. But if you know what you're dealing with, then just you could just write a quick script out to like just keep testing and see what you can do with this vulnerability that you found.
Definitely, and especially if it's like you will learn what attacks SQL maps is doing because it is very verbose. So it will tell you, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. And the thing is, you can write your own scripts, of course. That will give you a lot of practice. But I think you will be good enough to a point where if SQL map gives you an output, you will understand it. And I've had so many people give me the question, Uncle Rad, I got SQL map and it's giving me a blind SQL injection on Oracle database. How do I exploit this? I facepalm when I hear that, and I really wish people would learn more about SQL injection before they run tools that can destroy an entire database. That would be very kind of them. But that being said, sorry, that's a little bit of a sidetrack. I hope that helped a little bit.
Thank you for your.
Absolutely. So just while we're on the topic, Rat, I just want to ask. So what is the default like parameters or like arguments you run in your SQL map with, or like just to start things off? Like you just found a fresh program, you don't know what it's doing. You think it's SQL injectable in like a certain parameter. So what's the default argument you'd pass SQL map, or like other toolings or toolkits you might use for it?
So let me see. Let me get my notes right here. Blah blah blah. Hey. So what I will do. Yeah, sorry, I have a feed. So what I am going to try to do with a SQL map is I am going to, first of all, not use any parameters. That's what a lot of people are going to try, just SQL map and then see what it gives. Maybe it will find something there. But I'm always a little bit more careful with what I run, so I try to give the WAF parameter as well that it has to test with behind the WAF. There's the parameter for it to test less aggressively. I don't know what it is out of my head, and I can't find it in my note at the moment. But it's like those things that I will try. I don't know if anybody else has anything else that they will try in the beginning, but it's very basic stuff. Just running it, but trying to be as least aggressive as possible with my tool.
I sorry, totally agree. And then running, a bash Python script to, for example, try to find an IP behind a Cloudflare or security, etc. But not getting into any trouble, etc. But anyhow, the course has gone up very, very well, and proud for all to participate. We can have a discussion, offside, but there's just so much I just want to prove, but prove to yourself and the team because you are the expert. We all look up to you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, but I would hardly consider myself an expert even. I've only been, like I say, I've only been in the field for about 3 years, and I know that I still have so much to learn. And SQL injection is definitely not my specialty, for example. I will happily admit that. What I try to look for a lot is broken access control, IDORs, the business logic vulnerabilities, and I will use some of these tools, like for example, of course, I have to know how to do broad scope bug bounties and pen testing as well. I know how to run AMAS, I know how to run HTTPX or HTTP probe, I know how to run Aquatone. It's all not a problem, but I just prefer, and that's something that I try to do in bug bounties mostly, is I try to go for those business to business business to business applications. One, because they have a crap ton of functionality in them, and a lot of people say, "Oh man, main application. There's not a lot to test there." And whenever I hear them say that, I challenge them to make a main application and see how much goes into it. It really isn't as easy as you think, and there's so much functionality. Even though it might have already been covered by other testers, to cover everything and every single possible combination of vulnerabilities, that's impossible for one person alone. That's why bug bounty is so powerful. And every time you guys are going to a bug bounty target, I want you to treat it as if you are the first person to test that target. Why do I say this? One, because there's a big push towards agile, which pushes towards a two-week release cycle, 2 week sprint at least, and a lot of managers, when they hear 2 week sprint, they hear 2 week release cycle for some reason. But that's a good idea. That's a good thing for us as well, because frequent releases means that things can break frequently as well. Even if it has been tested before, that's okay. We're gonna test it again, and we might be testing something that has regression bugs in it. That's also why bug bounties are so great. You have your program open, and throughout time, new hunters are gonna come into the program. They're gonna test like has already been tested before, on features that have already been tested before, but they're gonna test it on a new release. So it's very bug bounties is a very competitive space, a very competitive industry, but there's more than enough room for other people to join. You just have to be very careful that you join the right bug bounty platform. I joined HackerOne from the beginning. I reported a bunch of bad vulnerabilities, not gonna lie about that. I thought like a pen tester when I first started bug bounty hunting, because I had a OSCP background. I had a pen testing mentality. But of course, you can't report those types of vulnerabilities in a bug bounty program. When you're in a bug bounty program, you have to look for things that are impactful for the company itself. And before you know what's impactful to the company itself, you have to know how the company works, read the manual, RTFM, we all know it probably. So yeah, just a little bit of tantrum there. Those are some tips I have for bug bounty starters. Sorry, David, you have a question? Or something to add?
No, my apologies.
No.
I accidentally misclicked. Very, very, as always, fluid and very explanatory methods, etc. We'll definitely continue to listen to this. I'd also like, maybe at one point we can take this offline, speak about some of the items I've done. Of course, they're better. But yeah, let's share it with the whole community. Awesome. And thanks to you.
Definitely, like if you guys don't already, it's definitely worth following David. He tweets out a lot of good stuff as well. I'm personally following him also. Hello, Benjamin. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm good, thanks, Matt.
Pleasure to meet you.
I just wanted to mention. So my background was originally as a developer for a few years, and then I worked as a software tester. And now I'm actually working as a sysadmin. But when I was doing software testing, we were talking about exploratory testing and the mindset. One of the things I came across was a rapid software testing methodology, which I think would be extremely beneficial to someone actually getting into software testing or even bug bounties.
So is the name just Rapid Software Testing Methodology? Is that what we have to put?
RST, yeah.
Awesome. I'm definitely gonna have a look at that, because like I'm always trying to evolve in my day job as well, and that's something that I find very important is that I don't do pen testing all day or be with pen testing all day, but also have some other things to do to learn more about how things work. And I don't know what I was gonna say after that. Sorry.
All good. And I think one of the other areas that has sort of been lacking from my sort of experience is definitely on the mobile side. So I've been having fun playing with Fiddler and my mobile and capturing traffic and having a look at what's going through for application testing and that sort of thing. Especially when they brought out these COVID tracing apps and seeing what traffic's actually being sent to the server, that was really interesting.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like for me as well. And I don't know, have you heard about objection?
I haven't known.
It's like a framework for mobile software testing as well, and it's built on Frida, and it allows you to interact with things like the application, but it also does things like automatic. It does things like SSL certificate pinning bypass. So they're like I like to use objection a lot whenever I'm testing. Of course, I test a lot on Android. It also works on iOS. I haven't tested it yet on iOS. I will never understand how Apple can create such a closed ecosystem. If I need to test something automatically, I need to have a better thing, something like the ADB or something, something. No, they do. Jesus, I'm not gonna get too mad about this. I've been mad about this enough in the past. Now it's time to lay it in the past and it's over. But anyway,
You own it.
sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, you own it. Very good explanation, and the way you preface this, great questions, and also the response as well. There was so much to look forward to, in my opinion. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, definitely. And the field of hacking is very broad as well. The field of hacking in general, there's so much you can do and learn about. And that's what I like about hacking as well. We are now learning about, for me, getting into hacking, start with web hacking, maybe network hacking, things like OSCP, but eventually you will want to move into another type of hacking. You will want to move into blockchain hacking, or you will want to move into any of the upcoming hacks that are available. IoT hacking. There's a lot of things that are just in their infancy, and their security is even more in its infancy. So we definitely have to do something about that. The only thing is going to be capturing traffic. That's something that's like that's the key to almost every single pen test that's not related to networking, is capturing that traffic and doing it in a good way. Like I can pen test my fridge if I want to, but I will have to capture the traffic first, and not just capture it, but also read it. So I can set my fridge proxy, and I know this is getting ridiculous that we're talking about setting a proxy on a fridge here, but I can do it. I can set it to Burp Suite. Burp Suite still won't be able to read it because I still need to be able to decrypt it. So I need to be able to insert my own certificate into it. As you can see, it can get quite complex. But it's fun and I love it. I love where it's going, and the things that like I look for now into the future 10 years from now, and I see certain things in front of me when it comes to blockchain and all of that. But I know that that's completely wrong, and the future holds so many beautiful surprises in store. Anyway, diversion. Sorry about that. Sometimes I get a little bit talkative. So if you have anything to ask or anything, feel free to interrupt me. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. Hello, Mr. QK9. How are you doing? Your microphone is muted, by the way. I don't know if you're speaking, but we can't hear you. Feel free to unmute yourself if you hear this, and feel free to ask your question. Awesome. Hello, I can hear you now. Pleasure to meet you. And we're gone again. So yeah, feel free to unmute yourself at any time and ask your question, my friend. I don't know if anybody else has any questions left, because we've talked about a lot. I also have some questions from YouTube as well. And on YouTube, a couple of people, and I'm sorry it took me so long to get to that, people on YouTube. I hope you're still there. Let's see. I am new to pen testing. I really love the concept of hacking and finding new vulnerabilities. But like you said, it's not just straight on hacking all the time. How would you recommend I start my pen testing journey? What courses, what labs, what should I do as a beginner to pen test? Well, that's easy. Google pen testing. That's the first step. And then look at what is involved in a pen test and drill down into each of those aspects. And make sure that you practice that not once, but multiple times on multiple machines. On, for example, Hack the Box, for example, Portswigger Academy, for example, Hackspert.com, my own website, hackspert.com/labs.php, that is. So there's a lot of places where you can practice doing a pen test. And if you really want, feel free to send me a pen test report of Hackspert. It can contain the vulnerabilities. I'll be happy to take a look at it. Definitely not a problem. info@thexssrat.com if anybody wants that. What courses? Well, I have an ethical hacking guide, A to Z, on Udemy and Podia. Of course, I'm going to have to recommend my own course, which is also going to be in the description below. But as for courses, you don't need a course. You know what I mean? You can do it without it. But you will need to find a company that is willing to train you and give you that experience.
Hello.
Hey, my friend, how are you doing?
What's up, brother?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good stuff. Hey, well, listen, I know I've come onto this late, so I don't know too much of what's been said, but I'm from the UK. I just got onto a new job recently as an intelligence analyst. It's for a firm who try and help people get their money back, you know, from scams and whatnot.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so it's really interesting for me to hear, you know, what you guys do in terms of the pen testing side of things, because mine's very OSINT heavy, you know.
Yeah, definitely. I can, like, for me.
So it's interesting for me to see where, you know, the middle section is, you know, with jurisdictions and whatnot. But yeah, sorry, I interrupted you there.
Oh no, definitely. Like, it's a great question. For me, what's really important in pen testing is I always try to look for web app pen testing, and I go very deep into the exploits that are available there. And I have my pen test of my checklist of exactly what I'm gonna do. Gonna look at the HTTP verbs. Gonna look at the IDORs, broken access control, injections. And then I also try to follow the OWASP top 10 a little bit. But we all know OWASP is vulnerability categories, so it's harder to say I tested specifically for this category, but you can still do it as long as you drill down a little bit more into detail. That's what I do a lot for my pen tests. I don't know if anybody else has anything that they usually take on with that. For me, if you start a pen test, OSINT is still very important to me. And this might seem silly, but I'm gonna scour the developers' profiles even, and I'm gonna see if they posted anything that's useful to me. And what people like, what people tend to forget is that whatever they post on social media is public for the whole world to see. And there's like a lot of ethical hackers, but there's also a lot of unethical hackers. And of course, like for example, stupid thing. Recently, I've seen these insurgents of people saying it's my birthday today. I'd be happy to wish you a happy birthday in a private email, but don't throw it on the internet. Hey, throw your social security number at it while you're at it, and maybe also your bank code and your whatever, you know. So yeah, open.
Oh, 100%, 100%.
And also just people like for me, I know I don't know if you know them, Innocent Lives Foundation. They try to track down pedophiles, and they do OSINT as well. A lot of OSINT using for that. So I guess a lot of it comes down to OSINT in the end.
Yeah, for sure. See, the thing why I think it's so interesting, sorry to divulge, is because in the coming years, with crypto and everything getting so much bigger, I think scams are going to become more popular than hacks. What do you think?
Definitely, like the easier things, and it's also because people are becoming a little bit less computer literate every single day. It's like the computers are making it easier for people, but that also means people understand less and less of what's going on. A stupid example is I taught my mom how to hover a link and to see if the link actually takes you where they say it would take you. And just that stupid action is probably gonna save me so many late night phone calls. Oh, honey, I clicked the wrong button again. You guys all probably know what I mean. So yeah,
Yeah, no, totally, totally. Well, listen, but it's a bit late for me, so I'm gonna go. But I'd be so happy to show you any of the cases that I've worked on or anything. There's too much money involved for me to keep it to myself, you know.
yeah, like I was thinking that when they said I'm from the UK, I was like, bro, it's 2:30 a.m. Shouldn't you be in bed, you know?
No, only 12:30, but only 12:30. But I've got a lot
Oh
of work to
yeah,
do.
it's
You've
fine.
heard of You've heard of chain analysis?
Sorry?
You've heard of chain analysis?
No, I haven't.
If you look them up, they helped, with Mount Gox.
Ah, yeah, taking down Mount Gox.
Yeah, they were the guys that helped a lot with the analysis. So I've got 2 certifications coming up for that. So I best get to sleep.
Dang, good night and wow, good luck, my friend. And I'm sure you're gonna crush it, man. Like, you're gonna show them what a certification should be like.
You know the vibes, brother. Thank you. When's your next space?
I have no idea. It's when the baby allows it.
Uh, no problem at all. Well, thank you. I hope I'll send you a message sometime.
Thank you, really appreciate that. And thanks for all your
Thank you,
input
man.
as well.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Cheers, see you later. Let's see, we also have Mr. Mike joining us. And hello, Mr. Mike, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Give me 1 second. Sorry, I'm having issues with my phone.
Oh, of course, for sure. I have.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, perfectly. Not anymore. And he's back.
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, perfect.
Sorry.
No, not a problem at all. I fumble so much with sound settings, it's unbelievable. Like, you guys probably know working from home is a lot of things like Zoom meetings and all of that stuff. I keep fumbling with my sound settings in Zoom. It's like my system is set to the headphones, my microphone is set correctly. I start up Zoom, everything's gone. Everything. It's like, oh my god, such a mess. And I need this for my recording setup, you know, and everything I open up Zoom, it completely messes up my recording setup. It angers me so
Try
much.
doing anything with an Oculus, by the way.
Ah,
Yeah.
you are too kind. I'm gonna decline. I'm gonna respectfully decline your offer, sir. Yeah, it's like all of those things. Like for me, I've noticed as well that everything is like it's evolving in a weird way, and I don't know even how to describe it because, like, just a stupid example, like, I have 4 different locations where I can change my sound. And
What is the stupid example number one before you go into the other four? Sorry,
oh,
if I
so
may.
I didn't even know I was gonna name 4. Sorry.
I mean, you definitely do not have to, of course. Trying to better understand.
The ways
Pardon
of
me, but
sorry, the
I'll
ways
lower the
of
background music.
now I understand it. It's the ways of changing the music. Yeah, like for me, I have my microphone itself, which has gain controls, and I can change volume on the microphone because there's a headset. I can change volume on
Okay.
the computer. I have my keyboard where I can change the volume. I can change it on the computer itself on YouTube, for example. And I have like this. I have a dial on my speakers as well. It's like
Nice.
I
Sorry.
don't. So no problem. It's like I don't need all of these controls. You know what I mean? It's like something. It's a strange world, and every time, like for me, I don't know even how to describe it. Maybe siloification. Everything's going into silos, working independently, working with each other, but like
Well,
integration.
different, it's home, hybrid, and even in person. That's my opinion. Just sorry.
No,
Go
definitely.
back on mute. Really, really great collaboration here, as always. You bring the brightest minds here. Looking to collab with you, quite soon, actually.
I really appreciate that, and I wish I had more time to hunt myself. Like recently, I've let my clients hunt a lot because like they book like a coaching session, and I prefer if they do everything, if they click around. I'm not going to be the one clicking around. I want them to do it because they're not gonna learn anything from watching me. And I will do it if they really want to. I will do it, but I can promise them that they're not gonna learn half as much as when they do it and I tell them how they would do it or how it would change or blah blah blah. Anyway, I don't know if there are any more questions. Yes, there are. I see we have another speaker. Awesome. I really appreciate you guys, by the way, because all of this I can talk for hours, but I would much rather hear from you guys. Hello, Mr. Ahmed. How are you doing?
Hello, how are you doing? I'm good.
I'm doing great, thank you.
My question is a little bit an advice for my career, but it zooms out about pen testing. So, does it suit this room? Can I ask it?
Yes, of course, for sure.
Okay. Now I'm 3 years of experience in information security in general. I started information security working as information security solutions, implementing solutions like QReader and this stuff. But my passion starts from the beginning for pen testing. But I didn't work a specific job like a pen tester. So, but I started bug hunting, and I found some bugs like SQL injections and so on.
Nice.
I got three P1 bugs. But now I'm working as information in general information security in a fintech company. So does it worth that I lose, for example, this position and some extra money to work as a specific pen tester, or can I work still in my work, information security, and do both? And which is better in future for long term?
I think that the job of pen tester isn't dying, but it's losing its attractiveness because a lot of the jobs are being taken over by developers. They're pushing security onto the development team, and while I do think pen testers certainly have security, if you have a solid job and if you have to take a pay cut to work as a pen tester, I would definitely not do it, because if you're working in general IT information, you have a lot of ways to grow, and that's gonna be your bread and butter, is those ways to specializations basically. And you work on a lot of stuff right now probably, but
Yes.
sooner or later you're gonna find stuff that you're better at than other stuff, and you're automatically gonna get assigned that stuff more, and you're automatically gonna grow into that role. It's something strange that happens, and you're probably already experiencing that a little bit, right? Like, if you really want to, I would just stay and do bug bounties, because like you say, if you found a few P1s, the thing is, like, you probably know that P1s, they are not very consistent, but you can definitely find them. So I would definitely just stay with the job and do some bug bounties in my spare time. The thing with pen testing as well is it's very restrictive. You're often bound by a certain scope, or you are bound by a time frame. But with bug bounties, you do whatever you want, and that's the fun part. Whereas pen testing, you have to ensure a certain level of coverage. Like you say, I've covered these types of vulnerabilities, or I've covered the OWASP top 10, for example. But covering that means testing a lot of things that you might not want to be testing for, maybe. That's where bug bounty shines, in my opinion. You're your own boss. I hope that helps a little bit, that answer.
So you mean staying at my position? It widen my surface for information security plus bug bounty, so I can so it will be balanced for future my career future.
Yeah, because bug bounties are only gonna grow from now on. It's cheap labor. Think about it. You're getting your application tested for free because you don't have to pay them anything until they find something. So bug bounties is very attractive for companies, whereas a pen tester is very expensive and can cost upwards of $40,000 for a simple pen test. So it's a little bit less attractive these days. So yeah, definitely, if I were you, I would stay in my company and I would do that. But look at every single, uh, just go to a room where you're in silence and write down every single advantage of staying and every single disadvantage of staying, and then weight them. Like, some advantages are going to be much more important than others, so give them a score as well. One thing might be a very heavy, very important thing, so it gets a 7. One thing might not be as important, so it only gets a 2. And then just look at the scores objectively and say, oh, I have 160 points for moving out of my job, and I have 170 points for staying, or something like that. But still, also, you have to put some emotion into it as well. I know I'm moving all over the place with this, but it's hard as well. Make sure that you make a decision that you are happy with for the rest of your life. If you really want to be a pen tester, go for it. You will find a job. There's no doubt about that. You have the intelligence, you have the wits about you, so you will definitely find something out there. But you have to think, okay, is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? And you are not just gonna do a basic pen test for the rest of your life, don't get me wrong. Eventually you're gonna grow into the role of senior pen tester, pen testing team lead, and even architect, where you're gonna design all of the different pen testing methodologies that your company uses. Whereas if you're like a manager, you're gonna implement them, etc. So you definitely have growing potential there as well. I had the same option. For me, I could pick between going full time with my own company, and staying in my job and just doing two jobs. And I picked for staying in my job, because if I would have gotten my own company and only that, I would have, Jesus, the pay cut would have been incredible. I would have had to start from the beginning again. Same for pentester. I would have started from zero. Like I would have made the same as somebody who just graduated from school. And I can't afford that. I just can't. I have a baby. I have a wife. I have a life. I just can't afford a basic income anymore. So for me, the choice was easy to make. It's, uh, I hope that advice helps a little bit. Just look at
Yes,
your
it's a valuable
situation.
advice.
Make sure that you do something that's good for you. I would stay and bite the bullet and actually grow in my job while I do bug bounties.
Hmm.
All right. So
Okay.
thank you very much for that question. Really appreciate it. I don't know if
Thank
you
you.
have any
Thank
more
you.
questions for me.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And thanks a lot to everybody else in the room as well. Without you guys, this would have never been possible. We've reached 50,000 followers even faster than I could have ever imagined. And it's not just by tweeting out technical stuff, it's not just by tweeting out exploits, it's by caring about people. And that's what I think is very important, and what this industry misses a little bit sometimes is that care about the person. And I know that people care, and it's not that I'm saying that people don't care, but a lot of people are unreachable, completely unreachable. That hurts me. That really hurts me because we have to be there for each other. This is a community, this is a tight community, and I think that we should all stick together a little bit, not fight each other. Even though I've been guilty of this in the past, I've sent out some negative tweets that I shouldn't have sent out. I shouldn't have sent out negativity at all. I don't want negativity in the world, so why am I creating it? But at least I realize it and I try to work on it, so. Hello, Tricky Lemons. How are you doing, my friend? Great seeing you again. You're muted, by the way, so I don't know if you're speaking, but we can't hear you. I have that a lot, by the way. I'll be talking in meetings, and the people will be looking at me and they'll be nodding for like 15 minutes because they want to screw with me. And then after 15 minutes, they'll say, "You have your microphone muted." And I'm like, "Dang, you guys, you're really nasty." uh, I think Tricky Lemons doesn't hear us or doesn't have his microphone on. Anyway, oh yes, there we go.
No, I didn't.
How are you, my
How
friend? It's
was
so great seeing you again.
it? Great hearing you, man.
Likewise.
Congrats on the 50.
Thanks, man. On to the 5 million, I'd say.
We gotta get to 100K first. Next week.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean, I know we can do it.
yeah. I say like let's just organize a giveaway, and then maybe next week we'll be at 150.
Yeah, there you go.
Not that we have an ego or anything. Not that. No, not at all. You guys are misunderstanding the situation. Anyway, I was thinking about closing off right here, so I don't know if anybody has anything else they would like to add or ask. Um, but I would like to thank you all for showing up and for your numerous interactions. I appreciate that really, really a lot. When I started with this meeting, I was reading out things that I would have prepared, that I prepared for this meeting. And I was a little bit scared that we were only going to be able to fill 15 to 20 minutes, but then the interaction started and we were almost at 2 hours again. So thank you very much, everybody. It's almost 2 a.m. for me. Uncle Red's gonna go to sleep. Good night, my friends. I love you. Bye, everybody.